Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Welcome to Hong Kong Confidential. I'm Jules Hannaford and I'm your host. I'm an Australian woman and I've been living in Hong Kong for many years. I'm a mother, a teacher, an author, and I want to share my wisdom and the wisdom of others with you. Thanks for joining me and I hope you enjoy the show. Hi Confidants, I just want to tell you about a book that I've written called Fool Me Twice. It's my memoir and it's a story of how I was scammed and assaulted while online dating. It was a difficult book to write because I really had to overcome the shame of my choices. But I wanted to do it so that I could help other people not get caught in the same trap that I was. At the end of the book, there are a whole lot of suggestions of what people need to look out for and how they can date safely online. My book is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble online, and it's also in Hong Kong bookstores. Here is a promo for my book. I hope you enjoy it.
From life on a farm in rural Australia, where wide open spaces made a young woman yearn to know what was beyond her country town. She moved to the city, became a mother, and found her dream career which took her across the world. But still, something's missing. In her search for love, she traveled far, trusted deeply. She wanted so badly to find someone that she almost lost herself in the process and learned some hard lessons along the way. Fool Me Twice, a new memoir by Jules Hannaford. Available on Amazon.
Today I'm here with Temmy Maclean. Hi Temmy, thank you for joining me today.
Hi Jules, you're very welcome.
Temmy, you went off to a holiday in Thailand with your mum. How did that come about?
This was in 2004. We went from Hong Kong to Thailand for a Christmas holiday and spent 1 week in Samui and then decided to shake things up a bit because we'd been there quite often and go to the Krabi region of Thailand just for a change of scene and change of experience, which we got.
Oh yeah, you sure did. Just for our listeners out there, Temmy was caught in the 2004 tsunami in Thailand with her mum. You were in Phi Phi Island when that happened?
We were at Ao Beach on Krabi, but the actual experience involved us taking a boat trip, one of these motorboat trips around different islands. You have lunch on Phi Phi and then you stop at various islands en route and on the way back. But we didn't get to Phi Phi because the tsunami struck. We were actually on an island called Bamboo Island just to do some snorkeling.
You'd left early in the morning to go on this day trip. So tell me what happens. You got up and you went on the boat to have this day trip. And was this your first island that you got to?
This was the very first one. The sky was a beautiful blue. Sea was aquamarine, golden sands. So we stopped at this island. People put on life jackets, did a little bit of snorkeling. When we arrived there was about maybe 10 or 12 other motorboat trips there because they all do the same itinerary. And then we all meet for lunch. I had gone in snorkeling, but I found the water really, really strange. And I kept being pulled and tugged. Although on the surface, the water was completely, mill pond perfect, as it often is in Thailand. But there was a weird undercurrent. And my mum's very nervous of water. And I know she doesn't like me going into the water. So she's at the edge and I could tell she was uneasy. People had gone into the water. My mum, however, hadn't. Anyway, it wasn't an enjoyable experience. There weren't that many fish to see. So I just came out of the sea. But this time my mum had a conversation with an American woman who was from the Phuket. This woman had told my mum there was something happening. There was an event. There was going to be a storm. We had to leave. She wasn't sure. My mum wasn't sure and how much had been lost in translation, but there was to be a thing. And so I asked the tour boat guide, Sam, what was this thing? Should we be on alert? And he said, no, there's nothing. There's no storm. And I could see there wasn't going to be a storm. Living in Hong Kong, you get a clear warning sign when there's going to be a storm. Sky was still blue. Everything looked perfect. But there was a different intensity on the beach. Some of the tour guides seemed to have rounded up their people and they were trying to get them onto the boat. And there was this sort of current of urgency or There was a different energy to the beach. We were no longer relaxing on the beach. People were being rounded up. My mum and I are confused and we're, what can it be? What can it be? There's nothing obvious in the horizon. The next thing we knew, the boats were hurriedly getting their passengers back. And in actual fact, ours was still empty, but the one beside us, the Phuket boat that had had the woman who spoke to my mum, it was full. It was completely full. But the guy started the engines and there was no sea. The boat was completely beached. Most of the sea had disappeared. There were still channels where there was water, but the sea as we know it had completely disappeared.
How quickly did that happen?
I wasn't watching the sea because we were obviously watching what was happening on the beach and, what's going on. But within seconds, I would say, it just very quickly withdrew. At this point, my mum got really freaked out. So she just tells me to run onto the boat. Our boat's still in a channel. And just practically as soon as we were on the boat with one man following us, the boat just took off up one of these channels, which still had water in it.
Hang on, were you on the boat?
We were on the boat.
Right.
We clambered on.
Everyone got on?
No, just my mum and I and a Thai man who came on behind us with great difficulty. By this time, the boat is really rocking. Mum and I quickly put on life jackets with no idea what was happening at all. You're completely reacting to circumstance. You're not thinking ahead or pondering. You're just going, get safe. We're sitting on the boat and wondering, are the others going to come or what's going to happen? And then the boat just takes off. So it's sort of Whiplash City. The boat's streaming along in what's left of the water because the sea's not there anymore. And then my mum's sitting opposite me. My mum turns to her right and she just gives out this blood-curdling yell, like nothing I'd heard before. And then to my left was nothing I'd seen before. It was like on top of the sea, on top of the actual water, there was just this broiling wall of water just came round the side of the island. It was black and brackish and roaring. I don't know how tall it would be, but it was a wall of water and it just sort of sat and roared towards us on top of the water. It was the oddest experience. It didn't churn up the water. It just came round on top of it. The boat now, the man's got his foot down. And the next thing we know, my mum yells again. And around the other side of the island is exactly the same.
Oh, coming from both directions.
We've got it coming from both directions. So by the most fortuitous chance, we happened to be approaching a bay. The island had some bays, but a lot of it was just sheer cliff face. We actually happened to be approaching a bay. So the driver just threw us in, stopped the boat, told us to out. And then we were just running for our lives, effectively.
Oh my gosh. So you got back on land.
We got back on land.
And then what did you do?
Well, I actually saw the two waves meet.
You knew at this stage it was a tsunami?
No.
You still didn't know what was going on?
It was just as I've told you. It was reacting to...
Yeah, just what was happening.
What was happening. We couldn't even hazard a guess. I wouldn't even have known what a tsunami looked like, supposing I was a geologist. I mean, it was just incredible. So you're just going, what was that? What was that? I actually saw the two waves meet, by which time they sort of expended their energy and we didn't get that big full-on wave crashing towards us because the two waves had actually met. But we saw the speedboats flew up into the air. They were smashed to smithereens. And we're just sort of looking in disbelief. At that point, we just go back. We're sort of halfway up the face and we look back. The wave's gone. There's water everywhere. But we're like, oh, okay, so that's the event. We've been through a really weird event, but what was it? So everyone's getting into groups and that must have been a dam must have burst. It was a such and such. It was a such and such. No one had any idea. And so the next thing we know, we're just all standing around in groups. This German couple had gone around rescuing fish because the fish that were on the shore now are these massive, big deep sea fish, obviously, brightly coloured, striped. So I did what they were doing and I took a fish down to the shore. The water was completely black. It was pitch black. And I knew the fish didn't have a chance, but that was my last sort of act for the environment.
For the listeners out there, Tammy's a massive environmentalist and animal lover.
Anyway, I didn't have time to think for very much longer because the next thing that we know is there had been a load of Thais down at the shoreline also. And the next thing they know, they're running towards us. Quick, quick, run, big wave, come again, big wave, come again. At this point, then everyone just takes to their heels. And bless him, there was a man at the bottom of this sort of cliff face. I can only call it a cliff face because it was sheer. It wasn't so high, but it was sheer. And there's this man at the bottom barring the way to the men and shouting, "Women and children first, women and children first." Well, you never want to hear that, no matter what the experience.
You know, it's a desperate situation.
You never want to hear that. So it was women and children first, bless them. The men stood at the bottom and they just sort of threw us up as far as they could throw us. And then we were literally on hands and knees, clawing in with our fingertips. The mountainside was scree, basically, with very few shrubs. You'd pull the shrubs and it would come away in your hand. So you're literally clawing your way up the mountain.
Did everyone get up the mountain, do you think, before the wave hit?
I would imagine no, simply because I realised how close to my heels the second wave was. I mean, we are talking inches. Just the sheer noise of it. It was super close behind us.
What did it sound like?
It sounded like nothing worldly. It was an enormous roar. I guess there was just so much debris and stuff just churning around inside it.
Yeah. And the power of Mother Nature.
Yeah.
It's scary,
and
isn't it?
And it's meters high and, volumes deep. And then the next thing we know, we're sort of up at the top and we're with a group of Finns. And there's all these rumours now that people are on their phones. But of course, because it was such an event, most of the phone networks were down and we were in a pretty deserted area anyway. The island was uninhabited apart from 2 tourist huts. There's all these rumours that Phi Phi's been wiped out. Phuket Airport is underwater. As these rumours are coming round, the Finns started to read to their kids. I think there was 5 adults and 4 children. They soon lost interest in that. And the next thing that they did was they had one of the kids' exercise books from school. And we all had to write down our name and address and hotel name and next of kin.
Oh my gosh.
And so it was at that point with that and with just all these rumours happening.
The second wave hadn't come yet.
That was the second wave that was run, big wave, come again.
And it came in.
We heard it behind us, but it didn't
catch you.
It didn't catch us.
But that's because you climbed the mountain.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
So that was us in our second wave. So by this time, there's a group of Scandinavians. They're telling us it's had blanket coverage in Belgium and Norway, and it was in fact a tsunami.
That's the first time you'd heard tsunami.
That was the very first time, and of course that made sense. But then there's all these other rumours that with a tsunami usually comes a third wave. And so of course that's when you think, well, this is not good. We're not witnessing an event anymore. We're actually in the event. We're experiencing the event. I actually put my credit card up inside my swimming costume because at that stage I sort of knew we were going to die.
You thought you'd put it there so they could identify your body.
Exactly. Because by this time I realised it was a worldwide event, that something just hadn't happened to our island or to Thailand. It was been talked about all over the world. So yeah, I thought that was it. It was game over.
You really thought that was the end of your life?
Yeah. I didn't think.
You knew.
I knew. I didn't have any expectation of rescue, of some
survival.
No, I mean...
Miracle.
Yeah, it would have been a miracle if the third wave had come again. We also had a geologist on the trip who was very experienced in the work of earthquakes and the consequences. And of course, he told us that the waves get ever bigger. And so we'd seen that with the first wave. We'd heard the second wave behind us as we were scrambling up this cliff. We weren't very high. We knew that the third wave was possibly going to take us if it came.
How many people were with you up on top of the cliff?
We didn't know because it was not inhabited. So we were in a clearing and then we could hear other people and then people coming up from other directions. We'd no way until later of actually coming together as a group. We were just with this group of Finns. I did meet a friend, not that she was a friend at the time, but I met a fellow Hong Kong teacher who was part of another group. And
really?
She'd been trying to phone rescue, get a helicopter. And that was, I kept on hearing this voice, Bamboo Island, Bamboo Island. She was in Oz. So I went over, spoke to her, and we found out we were neighbours.
In Hong Kong?
In Hong Kong.
Oh my gosh.
I've been friends
Small
ever
world.
since.
Oh my gosh. Wow. What was the mood of the group at that time? Was it hysterical? Was it somber? Were people crying? Was there fear? Was it shock? What was it?
It's a really good question. I think it was abject terror I think makes you go still rather than hysterical. I don't know if that's a survival instinct where you want to retain as much energy as possible. We were all very still. People were completely white-faced, massive eyes. I remember thinking the Finns' eyes looked like moons. They were just staring. Very quiet. Not even the children cried. And there were a number of children. It was just very, very quiet and very measured. I mean, the only activity really was that people would go into the bushes and come out and say, don't go in there, because certain things do happen to your body when you're really, really scared. And
what do you mean? I'm a bit lost.
The expression.
Oh, shit scared. Yeah. You can say that. You're allowed to swear on this podcast.
Oh, wow. That was still in school.
Yeah. But why didn't they want to go in there?
No, they would come out and say, don't go in there, because they'd obviously opened their bowels there.
Oh, right.
That was the only activity.
Okay. People just having to go and release their bowels. Yeah. Right. Oh, my gosh. Did this third wave come?
Well, that was the thing. We had all these rumours throughout the day, because this is still morning. It's still more or less late morning, lunchtime. And so there was this rumour that there was going to be a third wave, that it was going to be 2 to 3 hours from now. The geologist had been muttering to himself since I'd seen him. And what I thought was he was praying or he was muttering. I think what he was doing was making calculations, because it was him that told us that the wave was going to happen again in 2 to 3 hours. That took us to about 3 p.m.
And you're on this isolated, uninhabited island.
Yes, with 2 beach huts on it.
Did you have anywhere to go higher?
No.
You were at the highest point.
We were at the highest point.
That's why you had given over to the fact you were going to die.
Yeah.
Because it was a worldwide event. Nobody was coming.
Yep. There was no escape.
Yes. There was nowhere to go. What could you see around you once the wave had gone? What could you see in the water? And were you aware of any people losing their lives or anything like that?
My mum saw quite a few injuries. I was lucky enough not to. But she saw quite a few head injuries and a woman with a very extensive injury to her stomach. Her and her husband would have been the oldest couple. We didn't see them again, so I'm guessing that she succumbed to her injuries. But everyone that made it up the mountain was just a little bit bashed, bruised, scraped. There was no significant broken bones or big injuries of those of us who made it.
Were there people giving first aid to other people?
Down on the shore, after the first wave, I did see people, but by the time we'd gone up the cliff when the second wave struck, a lot of us had lost our possessions because we'd literally just ran. My mum and I had both lost our shoes. We literally had the clothes we were standing on and a life jacket. A woman that we made friends with, she was asthmatic. She'd lost her inhaler. Most people had lost what they came with. I still had a couple of bottles of water in a backpack.
And your credit card.
And my credit card and my purse.
And did you have your phone?
I had my phone, yeah.
Was it working?
It was working, but the battery was very, very low. And that ended up being problematic because the geologist actually was trying to use everyone's phone to phone his good friend, I think in the Netherlands, who he called an eminent seismologist. And he knew that if he could get through to him, then we'd get specific information rather than these rumours and hearsay and so on. It was nighttime, and by this time we'd been up and down again for just rumours that the third wave was coming, but it wasn't, and it was.
Well, so why did you go down? Because maybe you could get boats and get out.
Yeah, we were told to get down, so we actually made a chain. I don't know why we were going down, because we ended up coming back up again.
Oh, what? This is all day. This is going on all day.
Yeah.
And you're still there that night.
We're still there at night, so it's nightfall, basically. And by this time, the geologist is on my phone to the seismologist, and we're sitting, all of us had congregated in these little huts down on the shoreline. And the problem is we didn't think we could go up this cliff face in the dark. You know, there's no foothold, there's no finger hold, it would be pitch. And so we've pretty much camped out there. But 3 o'clock has passed and there's been no third wave. So we're like, well, maybe that's not going to happen. But we need the information from the seismologist. He's going to be the one that's going to tell us yes or no. So anyway, we're all in the hut. And I remember peeking out to see this man, the geologist who's on our trip, talking into the phone, and I could just see it wasn't boding well. And so everyone knew what he was doing outside on the phone. And when he opened the door, I remember the door creaked open so slowly as he came back in. His face was just like a hatchet. It was absolutely grim. And he said, I've spoken to my friend, he's eminent seismologist. He told me this is a big event. When something of this magnitude happens to the seafloor, there will be another wave. It will be bigger. We must go up. We must go up. At that point, people started crying. That was the first time I'd seen people cry. And I had it confirmed that we were in great danger. It was literally nightfall, so it was dusk. So we didn't know if we'd get time. And there was people sitting on the shore's edge. They wanted to die together. They didn't want to come up to the huts and go up the cliff. People are making all these outlandish decisions. The rest of us are trying to rally them. We've all got to do this. We've all got to do it.
How does that feel, trying to convince somebody not to suicide by staying on the water's edge? What does that feel like?
And time is of the essence as well.
And you're putting yourself at risk by spending time trying to encourage them.
Exactly. I think we'd just gone into a sort of group mentality that we had to work together against this phenomenon that none of us could understand and none of us could escape. It was like, come on, we've got to do this. We're all in this. And I think the thing in that sort of situation is that you can't make any decisions about your safety really, because you're dealing with something that's completely external of your control. So the only thing that you can really control is very basic. And that's, if push comes to shove, if that is trying to persuade someone to try and help themselves. And that's really the only decisions you can make, is help yourself and help someone else to help themselves, because everything else is so scarily out of your control.
You're powerless against nature.
Exactly.
And all you can do is really just try and get to the top and get as many people. Did you get these people to come with you from the shore, or did they stay?
Finally, there was 65 of us. Some people opted to stay, not many, but some people did. There were 65 of us. It's now dark. We now have a fire going, and none of us know what to do, how we're going to get up this cliff top in the dark. And then remarkably, from somewhere come these 2 storm lanterns, torches, so that we could see a little bit on our way up. So we broke off into groups of 10. And this man, Ash, came forward and said, I'll delegate myself the leader. Someone needs to organize us. So do this, do that. Split off into groups of 10, 2 storm lanterns per group, tie at the front, tie at the back, and link hands as much as possible, pull each other up. Let's do this thing. At least we've now got a sort of purpose, whereas before it had been just waiting. At least now we've got a purpose. So we went up in groups of 10.
In the dark?
In the dark.
And how was that?
It was no worse than it had been.
The first time you went up?
I mean, it was just awful, but it wasn't terrible. It was just awful. You don't really think about it. I mean, there were so many people whose soles of feet were ripped to shreds, literally, but were feeling no pain. You just don't.
Yeah, your adrenaline's kicking in, isn't it?
Yeah.
So Temmy, how old was your mum when all of this happened?
She was 63 years old.
Gosh, that's amazing, isn't it, for a 63-year-old to be climbing up and down rocks and running around in bare feet?
Exactly. She was the oldest person in the island after some casualties.
Oh, was she?
That was another worry, not only. And I saw a young boy fall, and it was only because a creeper wrapped itself round his foot that he didn't go head first down. That was the other thing, is my mum going to have a heart attack? Am I going to have a heart attack?
Yeah.
I'm asthmatic. Am I going to have an asthma attack? I mean, there's just so many variables. And in fact, one of the saddest, most ironic things was, of the group of Finns, as we were standing around in the afternoon, one of them came over to us very abjectly and said, did we have any water? And luckily I did have some spare. And she said, the reason is we've got champagne. She showed us 2 bottles of champagne. They'd been going to Phi Phi for a celebration, and no water. Of course, that's almost laughable in different circumstances. That it's ironic, but that could have been fatal for her kids. There's all these different factors coming into play.
Yes, and then you don't know how long you're going to be there. And if you're going to give up your water, are you putting yourself at risk, because then you run out of water?
Yeah.
What did you do? It's like an ethical dilemma, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what did you do?
Well, I mean, at the time I gave them water. Otherwise, the kids were going to die. We'd had one helicopter land on the beach and then take off again.
What?
We assumed, by this time there's helicopters going back and forth. We assumed it was because we'd no injured parties. So the Thais ran down to the helicopter, spoke to them, and then the helicopter took off.
But they didn't leave any food or water?
No, they didn't. But I think because it was an event of such magnitude,
they weren't prepared for it, were they? I'm sure if something like that happened again, there'd be real protocols in place, because the world has learnt from that experience.
Exactly.
But that was the first time in history something that big had ever happened.
Exactly.
How was that, though, to see a helicopter coming, thinking, oh, my God, rescue, and oh, see you later, it's gone? Was that devastating?
That was devastating. Harder than you think, because that gives you the hope.
And then your hope's pulled away.
The thing that messes with your head is the hope. Like, you can almost go into that sort of calm state of acceptance when there's no hope, because there's nowhere else to go. But when there's hope, that's what kills your head.
That's so interesting. So when you know that there's no hope and you know there's another wave coming and you know you're going to die, you can kind of accept it. But seeing a helicopter or some sort of rescue coming in, that gives you hope.
Yeah.
Then you can't accept that you're going to die.
Yes.
And it's that fight and flight thing again.
Exactly. Then you've got the drive back. You so badly want to survive, so badly. But if you can't, then there's nowhere to go with that in your head, you know.
How much of the time did it feel like you could survive, and how much of the time did it feel like you weren't going to survive?
I didn't think I was going to survive. I saw the helicopter. Then when I saw it take off,
you thought, oh, that's it.
Really, I didn't project much forward into the future. It was literally reacting to events as they were happening. I had no aspirations to ever see Thailand again. I just didn't think it was going to happen. So there was no point in going there. You know, I thought I was going to die in the tsunami.
And what about your life flashing before your eyes? They say that, you know, with a near-death experience, you remember all the things from your life and things like that. Did that happen to you, or were you just really in the moment?
I was literally in the moment. The only time I wasn't in the moment was when we had reached the top of the cliff, all 65 of us. This seismologist had told us this third wave was going to be 15 meters tall. We didn't know. We must have been about the 15-meter mark or the 13-meter mark or the 16-meter mark. We didn't know. We knew we were that close. The wave was going to arrive at 11:30.
Oh, so they had a time that there's another wave coming. 11:30 at night.
This is from the seismologist.
Right.
And all his calculations and what was obviously being broadcast in the news. So that was why we had to get up.
And did you still all have your life jackets?
I think I still had mine. I'm not sure. I don't know, or maybe not, because we didn't sleep on anything apart from sarongs.
What was the mood like once you'd all got to the top of the hill and you're waiting for this 11:30 wave?
I think we all were very introverted and really just coming to terms. I think because we knew for sure that if this wave struck, it was very, very unlikely we were going to survive. But there's still that tiny bit of hope that the 3 o'clock wave didn't come, so maybe the 11:30 one. What I did was I gave myself a cut off. And I said, if I'm still alive at 12 o'clock midnight, then I'm going to live. I'm going to win. It's not going to happen. And that was the only time I projected forward. Of course, the battery on my phone is on its very, very last leg. So I couldn't keep it on all the time and keep checking it. So I had to keep putting it fully off. And then I put it on again. And then I texted Eileen, who'd actually been rescued in the only boat that had docked on the island. Eileen's the girl that I met up at the top of the cliff after the second wave. And a boat had actually come in, a motorboat had come in from somewhere and taken a whole load of people away. We couldn't have done that possibly because they were literally up to their chin in water. And my mum couldn't have coped with it, with her fear of water. So about 20 people had been rescued from the island that we'd seen. And so I texted Eileen and said, any more bad stuff to come? And she said, no, I don't think so. And so again, that gave me that tiny bit of hope. They're not broadcasting that there's going to be a third wave. Maybe there's not.
Did you tell everybody in the group?
No. And most of us didn't speak English. So, you know, we're from so many different European countries.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's really just my mum and I. At that point, it's just a waiting game. So we're just waiting in the pitch black. Just waiting for about 4 or 5 hours.
I can't imagine what that was like. How was your mum through all of this?
I mean, very stoic. Incredibly so. In the time, you're just in the moment. I think you go into some sort of self-preservation mode. It's kind of hard to explain, but yeah, she was uncannily calm. We just did what we had to do. No fuss, no bother. Even though she was barefooted and I'd given her a pillow slip to wrap around her foot, that slipped off and okay, that was dealt with, you know, we just...
What, you just randomly found a pillow slip and put it on her foot?
Well, it was a tourist hut, right? That we were at.
Right. It was a tourist hut.
There was 2 tourist huts there. They were very basically equipped.
Was there any food or water in them?
No. People had been getting water from some of the speedboats because they'd been smashed up. but a lot of the debris was still floating in the water or had come to shore. We did with the Thais, when the Thais came up the hill, they had actually with them a light and a generator. So we actually had a full-blown neon light, and they'd taken up boxes of water.
How did they find a generator and a light?
No idea.
Wow, that's amazing. So what were the Thai people like during that?
They were incredible, absolutely incredible.
And these are just the boat boys and the boat owners and things like that.
Exactly. And they were no more better prepared or knew what was going on than we did. And in fact, at one point when we were up at the top, this man was trying to get my mum to go down because she's now the oldest person in the group. And he's like, please, Granny, please, Granny.
Oh.
You know how the Thais call you Mama or Granny?
Yeah.
Please, Granny, please, Granny. She refused to go down. And I looked at him and I said, look, and I patted my heart and I said, we very afraid. And he patted his heart and he said, we fear too.
Oh.
So they were as completely out of their depth as we were.
Oh my gosh.
But somehow from somewhere had managed to locate, well, I suppose because it was a tourist destination for these two huts indicated that people did stay there. So they'd got a generator from somewhere and they'd got a light, a neon light.
When 12 o'clock came and the wave hadn't come, did you relax a little bit and did you think, okay, maybe I'm going to get out of this alive?
Yeah.
And was that an amazing feeling?
I couldn't let myself relax to that extent.
Okay, you still had to be on alert?
What I could do was not be in that heightened state of terror that I had been in. I mean, it's just abject terror. So I let my body relax a bit, and I think some of us got some sleep.
Did everyone just lie on the ground up on the top of the hill and you covered yourself with a sarong or something that you had in your bag and you tried to sleep?
The Thais came round with as much clothes as they could distribute. They gave Mum and I a sarong each. That's what we lay on. Unfortunately, her sarong must have been covering up an ant's nest because when she woke the next morning, she was literally covered in ant bites.
Oh my God, that's terrible.
She must have been literally lying
on a nest.
on a nest.
Oh no, the poor thing.
But we'd made it through the night. And one of the other fears that I'd had on the night was by now, as we're coming up the cliff, the final time, there's lots of fires being lit. So as soon as a group of Thais arrive, there's a lot of stamping of feet, which I didn't realise was to scare away the snakes, which is a huge phobia of my mum's. In itself would have been enough.
Did she know about this? Right, okay.
I said, what are they stamping for? She, oh, God, nothing.
Don't tell Mum, yeah.
I said it's some sort of traditional cultural thing.
Right, perfect.
Yeah.
To ward away the evil spirits.
That's exactly it. So they're stamping their feet and then they're lighting fires everywhere. Now, of course, coming from Hong Kong, when we do get hill fires.
Yes, they take off.
That was my next fear because we've got just brutal undergrowth. It's very, very short and small, but it's completely dry. And if it starts to go up, then I've escaped death by water. I'm going to burn alive. So it was me that started going around Ash and the Thais and saying, can we put these down? Can we put these down? Because I could just see the next thing was going to be us running down the hill into the water
to get away from the fires.
Yeah.
And did they put some of them out?
They put most of them out.
Did they?
Yeah, because by this time I had the light anyway.
Right.
That was the last group that took the light up.
How were the kids by this time with the fins and stuff?
Again, very calm, very measured. I think mothers and fathers were just nurturing them. And I think every one of us, no matter how old or young, realised that we were in an event of tremendous magnitude. And no one knows how to react in that sort of circumstance because everything's so new, so different, so unexpected that you don't have a roadmap, really.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't. And you don't know what to do next.
No.
What happened the next morning when you woke up?
We went down again. We're now weaving a well-trodden path down this cliff.
Sure. By this time, you know there's no more.
We don't know that.
Oh, you don't know?
We don't know for
But you
sure.
can assume or not really? You're still nervous there might be another wave coming?
I think it was 50-50. It was a lot better than 100 to nothing.
Yes, which you were in for the first whole day.
Yeah. So I was in a much better place. And then lo and behold, we rocked down this hillside again. And what did we smell in the air but coffee?
What?
Somehow the Thais had located coffee, made coffee. We're standing at the bottom waiting for all of us to come down. And we had a cup of coffee.
You're joking. Oh my God, that's brilliant. That's so bizarre.
Most outlandish experience. Most outlandish 24 hours. It was like, what next?
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? Generator, light, water, coffee.
Al fresco breakfast.
Yeah.
So that was the next thing. And then it's just down again and it's just waiting. What's going to happen next? We don't know. We assume that there's all sorts of damage being done to the boats that have taken us here and the boats that presumably could have rescued us. Do we wait for helicopters? If these helicopters are rescuing everyone in Thailand, then are we going to be here for days? I used to wear contact lenses. This is the second day now, 24 hours later, I've got my contact lenses in there starting to go dry. I'm thinking, am I going to go blind? But we didn't think that we were going to be rescued that day.
So you were prepared to wait for a bit. And were you hungry?
No, I don't recall being hungry. But maybe that's just because...
The adrenaline and the shock and everything.
I think if you've got water, then food's a luxury in these conditions. We then waited and waited and waited. And then the next thing we knew was that Sam was coming round very discreetly, coming round all the tour group. And he was telling people that there was a chance that there would be a rescue boat just for our group. But keep it quiet, keep it quiet, keep it quiet. Okay, how can this be? Is this too good to be true? And now we're really starting to see that there's a ray of hope. I'm down at the water's edge. I couldn't keep my eyes from the horizon. My eyes were pinned to the horizon. My mum was very nervous that I was doing that, but that's how I had to be. I had to scan the horizon. She had to not, so there was a bit of tension there. And then we hear, it's about 2:00, 3:00, and we hear the sound of a boat. And you cannot imagine
the joy, the relief.
Well, initially...
Is it coming for us or is it...
Exactly.
Yeah, or am I imagining it? Yeah.
Yep. Is this real or is it just going to drop off supplies? Is it a rescue boat? What's happening? To cut a long story short, it inched its way in. It couldn't have come quicker for us, but it seemed to come so slowly. Came in. Sam's group got on it.
Is that your group?
That's our group. Sam's our tour guide. We got on it. All of us are there apart from one person. We've come back almost a full house, which is really good.
One person lost their life.
One person.
What was the reaction of the people when the boat came in and you guys got on the boat and some people were left behind?
It seemed incredible that there actually was a boat that Sam had managed to get us rescued. Well, everyone obviously rushed towards the boat as it came into shore. We knew that we were the privileged few that Sam had arranged the boat for. So there was a real case of some of the ties that had been on the boat came off and they literally let the chosen few, I guess you'd call it, from Sam, through onto the boat. There was a bit of altercation between two men who were desperate to get onto the boat, as was everyone. But these two really put up a fight and refused to give up when the others had sort of accepted they were being turned away.
And did they get on the boat?
They did get on the boat.
Because they were persistent.
They were just desperate. And it got physical and we didn't want to get hurt at that stage in the day.
Sure.
That would be the last thing
we
need.
And so what happened to those other people that were still left on the island?
I know for a fact that a number of them had to stay a second night simply because we met them one of the following days. So I don't know how each group was taken off the island or of what time.
Because there were about 65 of you there, weren't there?
That's right.
And then how many were taken off on your boat roughly, do you
reckon?
About
15, I guess.
15?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's a lot of
still
people.
50 people left behind. Oh my gosh.
And along the back of the boat, which I thought was really funny at the time and I didn't understand why, there were these 5 or 6 Thai guys standing completely erect, like statues. And they're not moving. Their eyes are just fixed on the horizon and on the sea. And I'm like, they're scanning for another wave.
Did that make you a bit nervous, thinking, great, now we're going out on the ocean and there's going to be another wave coming?
Yep. As much as possible, of course. The boat driver keeps as close to shore as he can. But there's all this debris. There's huts in the water. There's all sorts of wooden debris, tree trunks, but most of all, the prevalence of huts, like full huts. Just bobbing past us, yeah. And we must have passed an island that was popular with tourists because Sam said that he pointed to the island and he said, on there were many huts, many tourists, but now nothing. I don't know how he knew that, but you could see the huts had gone and presumably the people in them. These Thai guys were really starting to freak us all out because they're just, and if they did have to speak, it was out the side of their mouths. They didn't turn their heads a centimetre, a millimetre, so that they were completely scanning the horizon. And if every so often they'd yell to the driver and the driver would swear really violently. And it was only then that I realized they weren't actually scanning the horizon for a wave.
Oh.
They were looking out for dead bodies.
Did you see dead bodies?
I didn't
look.
Or
you didn't look? That's not something you wanted to see,
no.
So you deliberately didn't watch out for it. Oh, my God, that's amazing. So, Temmy, what happened to the American woman who was the first one that gave you the warning that something was going to happen?
Well, her boat had filled up. They'd beached, so they couldn't take off when we did. So we'd managed to get up the channel when the wave hit. But we found out later from Sam that the boat had managed to take off and it had ridden out the first wave, but it had gone down in the second wave.
Oh, so everybody on that boat passed away.
Everyone was lost.
Oh, that's super sad. How was it leaving the other people still on the island when you got rescued?
Well, this was it.
Did you feel bad leaving them behind, or was it like, oh, well, this is our luck, it's our tour, see you later?
We were just so grateful. Yeah. It was just sheer gratitude. We've lived through this, going from zero expectations to be doing what we're actually doing. To doing it, it's just incredible. So you're just lost in that whole sense of what has happened there and how did we do it? How did we make it
How
through?
did you and your mother survive that?
This is the thing that was kind of hard to accept. It wasn't anything we did. It was nothing that we could be proud of and say, look, we've made a good decision here. And unfortunately, others didn't. And that makes you think of just about the whole randomness of the event. It wasn't us, but it could have been. It was someone else. It wasn't us. And it just makes you think how vulnerable you are in these situations, that nothing you can do, nothing you can think is going to make a difference to your survival. You just are or you're not.
Yeah, and it's random good luck, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what natural disasters are, aren't they?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's crazy. So how long was your boat ride back to civilization and what did you find when you get there?
We came in at a different beach from we'd left from.
In Krabi?
In a different part of Aonang, or a different part of Krabi, different part of the beach. And of course, that was really surreal. Seafront restaurants, everything had gone. There were leaves and debris, maybe for half a mile up the road. We got to our hotel, which wasn't even on the beach. And it obviously taken a lot of the wave because there was leaves everywhere. A lot of banged up people, a lot of bruised people. A lot of people with bandages. But we're walking up the road towards our hotel, both of us in our bare feet, literally, having survived this incredible experience. There's music playing in one of the cafes and people are outside having breakfast. So it just adds to the whole surreal nature of the event. We thought this was...
Yeah, the end of your life.
Yeah, we thought this was going to be life and death. And yet there's people who are relatively unscathed and are just getting on with their life. It wasn't a horrible experience. It was just a weird experience.
And it just also reminds you that after things like this, life does have to go on.
Yeah.
For the survivors, and they've got to eat breakfast.
Yeah, exactly.
If you've got electricity, play some music to cheer people up.
Yeah, and get it back to as normal as possible.
What were your next steps? Were you thinking, we've got to get out of here? How are we going to do it? We've got to help others? Or were you even thinking about that? Or were you in such shock that it was just really one foot in front of the other?
For the first while, it was one foot in front of the other. And we actually forgot to call my grandmother to tell her that we were okay.
Did your grandma know you were in Thailand?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, was she having a freak out?
Yeah. The priest had visited her. My uncles thought they were going to fly out because, of course, my mum's given the address of where we're going to be. And it wouldn't take much to put two and two together. So she thought we'd been caught in it. And we completely forgot to call her. But at the time, we know that we can't leave. And that's not really anything important at the moment. We're safe. We know that there's been so many people injured and orphaned that they are being flown back to the UK. My mum still got on her phone a text message from the British Embassy in Bangkok saying, if you need a flight home, just come to the airport and we will deal with it. No problem.
Oh, wow, that's great.
We knew that the airports for every nationality, that was going to be the plan of action. So we'd be waiting days to get out.
There was no rush to get to the airport because you knew you wouldn't get out for quite a while.
Yeah.
What did you do next?
We took obviously there was loads of appeals for clothes for survivors that were in hospital that had lost literally everything, emptied our suitcases, took them up there.
Your hotel room hadn't been hit?
No, we weren't near the sea, which was odd as to why there was so much debris floating around in our lobby. They obviously touched it in some respect. Mum and I dealt with it in completely different ways. I was obsessed with the TV and the numbers and the sheer scale of it.
I was too.
The magnitude.
I was in Hong Kong, obsessed with watching it.
Yeah. Just the countries, and the earth had wobbled on its axis. I mean, it was unparalleled what you were seeing. That's where my head went. I had to know more and know more and know more. Whereas my mum didn't want to know anything about it. She couldn't deal with it. She couldn't process it. We came at it from completely different angles. Likewise, I had to go down to the front. That was a very, very spooky experience, because down at the front, Aonang Beach is a big long stretch of beach, but it's got a big promenade on top of it, which is where the main road was. And there's a pavement there. Just under the pavement is the drop to the beach. And because a lot of the people that were lost in that area had been fishermen, and it's a lot of Muslims that take that work in that part of Thailand, there was just a bank, single deep, it wasn't double deep, but just a row of women dressed completely in white, completely silent, just staring out to sea, waiting for their husbands or their brothers or their fathers to come home.
Oh, how sad.
And that was a really striking image. I had to do it. My mum didn't want to. I had to be there. I just had to. It was part of the process. Every 10 meters or so, there's these ambulances. They're now well equipped. It's now like the third and the fourth and the fifth day. Same scenario every day. They're just standing there. They're like statues. And every so often you'd hear a boat and you'd feel the tension in the air. You'd literally feel it. Sometimes the boat would go past our little inlet, our bay, the beach. Sometimes it would start to come in. And when it started to come in, you literally felt the atoms in the air changed. The emergency servicemen would get straight into the ambulances. They'd start obviously pumping up their equipment. There would be this real frisson of tension amongst the women, and obviously hoping against hope that one of their loved ones was going to come out of the boat.
Did you see any reunion?
I didn't see one live person. It was just body bag after body bag.
Oh my gosh. And then they've got to go and identify. Oh my gosh.
If they were lucky enough to actually locate.
What do you feel it was that was propelling you to want to go down and be at the ocean and be a part of that?
I don't know. I think that was just my individual way of dealing with it. But the opposite happened when I came back to Hong Kong. When I came back to Hong Kong, I didn't want anything to do with it. I didn't want to read about it. I couldn't process it. I think it was just part of the processing of it. I had to get some sort of
closure
in Thailand, and then that had to be it.
Couldn't talk about it here. You did write something, didn't you? You wrote a piece when you got back early on, if I remember correctly.
That was my debriefing. That was just personal to myself.
Okay.
That wasn't published anywhere.
Oh, it wasn't. I thought it was.
I think you might be thinking about the Tsunami Diary.
Yes. What's that?
That was written by another person. In fact, it was Eileen's daughter, Siobhan, who wrote the piece, and Mum and I are mentioned in it.
Oh, right. That's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we actually had another experience the following day after Mum and I were rescued. We'd said to Eileen jokingly at one point in the proceedings when they were leaving, "We'll meet you in the Irish bar in Aonang," never thinking that was going to happen. But the next night, sure enough, Mum and I went down and Siobhan and Eileen are sitting there.
And they didn't know at that stage whether you'd survived or not.
They didn't know. I think Siobhan did recall in the book that she'd got that text message from me. And she said, Mum wrote back and said, "I don't think so." But I think that was the last they'd heard of us because my phone then was finished. We just had the most bizarre conversation, as you can imagine. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And then the weirdest thing happened. There's this massive commotion outside. I don't know if it's a fight. I don't know if people are running in a certain direction or what.
Did you think there's another one coming?
Well, I wasn't the only one. I go outside. What's happening? There's people running, obviously, up from the beach direction, but we're far enough away from the beach that I didn't feel in imminent danger. I actually started going down the road to see what's happening. It was still very, very far from the beach. It would have to be a ginormous wave if it was a wave. But there are these people running up from the beach and had obviously been down towards the shore. And sure enough, someone had either thought they'd seen another wave, or I can't possibly begin to imagine that it was a prank. I think people were just in such a heightened state of anxiety that everything was knocking them and everything was a danger. And they possibly did think it was a wave. Of course, the news travelled like wildfire. Before long, we're all running like a pack.
Really? So did you start running up the hill?
Inland, there wasn't a hill.
Oh, right. Just went inland. And your mum? Poor mum's got to run again.
I think she was well ahead of me.
Oh, my gosh. Did you see Sam again, the guy who kind of rescued you and got the rescue boat?
We did. We saw him back down at the shore. He was amongst the ladies in white that were waiting for their loved ones. He was waiting for a boat to take him to Phi Phi. And of course we said, why are you going to Phi Phi, Sam? There's nothing left on Phi Phi. And he said, my sister lived there. She had a hairdressing business there. And I haven't heard from her since the tsunami struck. So he was going over to search through the wreckage for her body, knowing that he wouldn't find her alive.
Oh, that's super sad. When you did call Grandma, what was that like? What happened? When did you remember that you had to call home?
I mean, we didn't have her in agony for days. It was just maybe 24 hours or so. I think maybe it was the night that we came back.
And what was her response?
I literally can't recall.
Oh, right, okay.
I don't even know if I made the call. I think it would have probably been my mum.
Oh, okay. After that scare, running up the road inland, you realised that there wasn't another tsunami coming. Did you go back to the Irish pub? What did you do?
Put my mum in a straitjacket.
Oh, your poor mum.
Yeah, she was in a bit of a state. But this time we don't actually know if it's true or not. So we're running, not quite knowing what we're running from, but we're all running. We ran to Eileen's hotel. It was just up the road. We're in Eileen's hotel room. Siobhan, bless her, is getting 4 of everything to pack because we think we're going to be on the move again. So she's counting out 4 apples, mum, me, Temmy, Moira. 4 bottles of water, mum, me, Temmy, Moira. So she's getting these.
How old is she, Siobhan?
She would be about
teenager or in her 20s?
In her late teens, early 20s at the time.
Okay. And you were in your 30s?
Yeah. And so I'm trying to keep my mum from climbing on the ceiling. It's just chaos. But we think we're on the road again on the march. And then I can't recall what happened. I don't know if we put the TV on or the threat went. I think maybe I went out again further down the road and found out exactly what had happened. I can't recall.
Did you just head back to your hotel eventually?
Yeah. So you wouldn't think there would be a funny story that would come out of anything to do with Phi Phi, given its absolute the devastation that happened to it. But there was one time we were down on the shore again, and I met these 2 Australian boys outside one of the huts. And then I said, where did you come from today? He said, Phi Phi. I said, oh, Phi Phi's gone. And he said, no, I'm going back to Phi Phi. I'll be back in Phi Phi. And I was like, oh, Phi Phi's gone. He's like, no, I'll be going back to Phi Phi. I'm going back to Phi Phi. And I got into this groove where I literally couldn't get out of this part of this. I couldn't get out of it. So I kept on saying, Phi Phi's gone. No, I'll be going back to Phi Phi. And I don't know how many times we repeated ourselves. I was stuck. I literally couldn't move on. And he seemed to be stuck. And it wasn't until obviously someone had been overhearing this bizarre conversation that we've been having that neither of us could move on from. Phi Phi's gone. No, I'm going back. This Australian woman just stalked over and she slapped the guy on the back and she said, mate, Phi Phi's gone. Move on. And bless him, he just looked down at his shorts because obviously what that meant was that everything had gone.
Nothing.
He had nothing. So he looked down at his shorts and he went, oh, well, these are my favourite shorts anyway.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. Mate, Phi Phi's gone. Move on. Love a good Australian telling it straight. How long were you in Thailand before you got out?
We came back on our regular flight. By that time, I don't know how the airport had cleared what must have been a massive backlog as well as just getting people out and repatriated into their countries. I don't know how they did it. We didn't expect to
your regular flight.
To be on that flight. We thought we'd be delayed at least 4, 5, 6, 7 days. We wouldn't have been surprised.
Did you have plenty of food and water and was everything okay in the week that you were there? Oh, you were saying you packed up clothes. Did you donate a lot of your stuff to the hospitals or?
Yeah, I mean, there was just loads of centres. That's what everyone was doing. You know, if you were lucky enough to come back with more than your life, then
you were donating it.
You were in a good place, yeah.
Do you know how many lives were lost on the island of Krabi?
Don't.
No.
It's something I
don't want to know.
Yeah, that would be just too
much for you. Yeah. Have you really rarely spoken about it since the event?
Yeah.
I feel really honoured that you're here. Thank you so much for coming to talk to us, because it's really, really powerful. It's a powerful, powerful story. How do you think that it changed you as a person? Did it change you as a person?
I'd like to think it did in a very small way. I'd like to think that I'm more grateful for the experiences in the life that, well, a lot of us are privileged enough to lead. I mean, these natural disasters take usually very poor communities by absolute storm and ravish them. And people lose family members, they lose their livelihoods, they lose their houses, their homes, their lives.
You were very lucky to be able to come back to your home and job in Hong Kong.
Exactly. And so I think it's just having a bit more sensitivity as to what other people, a tsunami is a big wave. It's not. A hurricane is a massive thing. For those of us that live in Hong Kong, where we've got the infrastructure that can support these things.
Yes, because we've lived through some big typhoons here in Hong Kong, haven't we? Do you get more nervous in those sort of natural disaster situations since the tsunami?
I went into the same mode in the T10.
For the listeners out there, we had a massive Typhoon 10 here, which is the biggest typhoon you can have. I think it was around August, wasn't it? It's the biggest typhoon that Hong Kong's seen for more than 130 years or something ridiculous, wasn't it?
On record.
It was huge. And we had access to television and social media during it, so we could see the damage that was being done and how massive it was, with cranes swinging and
windows being blown out.
Windows smashed in. It was just incredible, the waves that were coming and people being swept along the road, and it was full on. If you were in your little bubble and you couldn't see what was going on, you wouldn't realise perhaps how bad it was. But because we could see, what happened to you during that?
Just to make the point, it was the length of time it went on for.
Yes.
We've had so many typhoons that have been direct hits or that have been really, really strong, but they've not just gone on.
Yes,
and
this went on, what, 10, 12 hours, wasn't it?
And
it was a long time.
We're never going to get out.
Yeah. Did you get super stressed and go into...
I went into the same place as I'd been in the tsunami, which was really interesting to me because I didn't think I could.
Yeah, that's super interesting. But was it that calm, that acceptance, or were you in that terror?
I was in the fight or flight.
Right, okay.
I had to get out. I didn't know how. I'm on the 21st floor. My flat was swaying.
That'd be awful.
Yes.
I live on the 3rd floor, guys, so I've got no idea what it would be like to be on the 21st floor.
I'm on a ridge and I'm very exposed. The flat was swaying and I tried to endure it for as long as I could, and then I just went into full fight or flight.
What did you do?
I had to go down to the lobby, then I couldn't stay in the lobby. I had to go back up to my flat, then I couldn't stay in the flat because I was terrified, and then I had to go back down to the lobby. I was just pacing. I was like a lion in a cage. I didn't know what to do. I kept telling myself in my head, logically, I was saying, I'm okay this time. I'm in Hong Kong. I'm safe. We have done this before. The logic dictates that I'm fine. Nothing is going to happen to me. But my body went into that complete mode of terror.
I can't imagine what that would have been like, but I do believe it's like post-traumatic stress, isn't it? It's a similar kind of thing, I believe, where you have all those old feelings and that fear and that reaction coming up again because you've been triggered.
Yes.
The typhoon triggered you.
Yeah. I was in a heightened state of alert, of fear. I got scared to open cupboards. I got scared to open drawers. I was just terrified of the unknown. I just went into a really dark place. But it's interesting because the very next day, Eileen, who we'd met under the circumstances, phoned me. We were both saying, I will never do that again. Can't do that again. And it was just this constant mantra of, I can't do that again. I will never go through that again. Both of us felt exactly the same way. And the people that were around her at the time couldn't understand it. Obviously, it was a scary situation, but we went...
You went into tsunami terror. Right. Yeah. Interesting. Even though it was 15 years ago, you still had that come back.
I was so surprised. The strangest thing was because my head was saying, no, it's okay, but my body was going, it's not.
It really makes sense. It doesn't surprise me, but I wonder, like, from after the tsunami, did you have a more nervous disposition just in general in your character, or you the same person than before and then all of a sudden this event
Yeah.
really brought back the same things.
I think it was just that trigger. And it's funny because Eileen experienced the same thing when she was on the phone to me. And when we were saying, oh, never do it again, never do it again. She said, look, Temmy, it's okay. I have just moved into a new flat. We have a car park. The car park is right at the entrance to the building. So our space is right at the entrance to the building. What we'll do, the next time there's a T10, you come over and we'll just drive. And I'm like, where to, Thelma? Where are we going in a T10?
Do you know what you've got to do? You've got to get a flight out before the T8 goes up.
I completely understood where she was coming from. It's that whole fight or flight. I've got to get away. I've got to get out. I've got to get away.
Interestingly, we'll just drive, because what you did was you just climbed and you just ran. Like, you didn't really have a purpose. She's just doing that same thing again, fight or flight. We will fly.
Yep, because you can't fight the typhoon. You can't fight a tsunami. So you just go into complete and utter flight mode.
First of all, can you tell me what changes did you see in your mum after the tsunami? How did it affect her?
In terms of her physical disposition, I think she's really well. She is a very healthy person, but it was obviously a huge psychological trauma. She had to go to counselling for a year. She's never been able to say the word tsunami. She calls it the Satsuma.
Oh, really?
Which makes for some very interesting conversations with strangers. If she doesn't call it the Satsuma, she would refer to when we were running in Thailand. And I'll be like, when have I ever run in Thailand? I don't even run for the bus. And then I'll be like, oh, right. Oh, okay. When we were running for our lives in Thailand. She can't refer to it. Literally cannot say the words.
Has she ever been back to Thailand?
Yes, to Samui.
Oh, and how was that?
It's a completely different geographical layout. Where we stay on the My Beach is a massive, massive shallow beach. We're also on the opposite side to any
tectonic plates.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Okay, so it's safe. Did you have any trouble going back to Thailand initially?
Initially, I did.
How long did it take you?
I had to know where my exit routes were, and I had to be near high ground. But to be honest, that passed fairly quickly. It was just maybe the first couple of times that I was very aware of what my exit routes would be. I think even now, though, I'm still conscious of.
I'm very much like that, just in general. On the ferry, I'm conscious of my exit routes.
Right.
And wherever I am, I'm conscious of what to do in a disaster.
Right.
Only because I'm like such a big like first aid giver and rescuer.
Here I come.
You want to be with me if there's a disaster. Do you feel like you did have any sort of post-traumatic stress from this?
I don't think so.
Did you ever have any counselling or therapy for it?
This is it.
This is it now.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. You've done very well. I think you're cured. Maybe the next Typhoon 10 will be manageable now.
I wouldn't know. I won't be here.
Oh, you'll be gone.
I'll be with Thelma.
Has anything positive come out of this experience for you?
I think initially I was so glad to be alive. It's just that constant sense of wonderment and just sheer joy in the absolute simplest things in life that I thought I'd never experience again. Just even a cup of coffee and what life should actually be about if you are being mindful and you are sort of
appreciating the small things in life.
Exactly.
That's really what gave you that appreciation again.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
But I think, of course, with the busyness of all our lives, then very quickly you tend to forget about the importance of thinking like that. But certainly initially, you know, I was like, look at this. This is a pen. I'm holding a pen. I'm going to write something.
But I never see a pen again.
These are my shoes.
That's cool.
I never thought I'd see shoes again.
Some people who go through near-death experiences, especially when a lot of other people have lost their lives, sometimes feel survivor's guilt, I've read. Is that something that you experience?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Tell me about that. What is it like? How does it come about?
It's just the whole randomness of the event. We couldn't take pleasure in our survival because we'd done nothing to affect it. We were just so lucky. We could have just been so not lucky. It was just that whole, you can't take pleasure in anything because you've really, in the fact that you're alive, but so many people are dead, just because it wasn't down to you. It was down to the random nature of the universe.
Are you religious?
No, not in the sort of religious sense of the word, maybe more spiritual than religious.
So you didn't feel like it was an act of God that saved you?
No, I've not thought about it in that much.
I wouldn't have either because I'm an atheist. I was just curious. If you could go back and change anything about that day, would you?
Yeah, I wouldn't be there.
Yeah, you would have stayed in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Do you wish that you had never had that experience?
I'm glad only because I'm out it alive. I wouldn't have.
You wouldn't want to wish that on anyone, and you certainly wouldn't want to go through anything like that again.
No. I'm just so glad that we came out not even hurt, apart from quite a lot of ant bites on Mum's legs. I mean, we weren't even scathed, really, and yet so many people must have been seriously hurt if they didn't lose their lives.
Do you have any advice for anyone caught in a natural disaster?
No, I don't think that you are in a place where you can
make choices,
think rationally or make choices. Again, it comes back to that. We were just swept along by events. We happened to pitch the boat that ditched at the side of a sandy bay. We happened to have enough time to run up the cliff. You know, the wave, by its very nature, by the time it had got to us, maybe wasn't as strong as it was in certain parts of the island. We were getting the other side of the wave. So the wave was coming at the island full on the other side of the island.
You were getting the wash-off
We were
wave.
getting the wash-off round the edges of the island. So again, if we docked at a completely different part of the island, had we been on Phi Phi, where we were going for lunch, so had it struck a few hours later, Phi Phi was wiped out.
Wasn't it?
There was no survivors on Phi Phi.
No survivors. Because it's a really small, thin island. I've been to Phi Phi,
Yeah.
like it's literally about 50 metres across.
Yeah.
So the whole thing just would have smashed it.
Close to the water. There's hardly any raised ground. I mean, if we'd been there for lunch, that was us.
How is it processing something like that? You were just in the right place at the right time. If you'd been in the wrong place, you'd be dead.
What are the odds?
I know.
It's just staggering when you think about the odds, because it really shouldn't have been that way.
Life isn't fair.
Life isn't fair.
Thankfully, you survived. Was there a massive feeling of sadness and somberness in Thailand after the tsunami in the days before you left? Or panic or fear? What was the vibe like?
It's hard to say. Obviously, everyone was dealing with things in such different ways. Like,
perhaps it's very introspective. You
dig deep to yourself. So like I said, I needed to know all about it. I needed to be part of it. I needed to see as much as possible. My mum didn't want anything to do with it. That was my way of processing it.
Did you cry or break down or go into shock or anything like that afterwards? In Thailand or back in Hong Kong?
Not in Thailand. I think we were more in a state of shock. I mean, it's hard to gauge really what sort of state you were in because you couldn't rationalize your own thought processes. You've been blown away by the most staggering event that you will hopefully ever experience.
In your life, yes.
You're not really doing anything other than just sort of one step. What
was it like getting back to Hong Kong? Was it like a relief, or did you drop your bundle then? Or was it just like, thank goodness that's over?
Well, that was surreal because I never thought I'd be back in Hong Kong. Even in Thailand, I knew I was coming back to Hong Kong, but I found it really hard to believe that I was here. I was resuming my old life.
Was it hard to get back into your old life after that trauma?
I think it was hard at first, but then very quickly life gets you into its groove, doesn't it? And unless you actively resist that, then you're pulled back into normality.
Did you find your feet and then just randomly drop your bundle later, or did you really keep it together and drop your bundle just in the typhoon 15 years later? Was that the first time you really had sort of a post-traumatic experience, the typhoon?
That was the first time that I experienced the same feeling of terror as I had in the tsunami. Obviously, I had feelings of great sadness. Yeah, at times, especially when I was sort of debriefing and I was writing my own little piece just for my own purposes. There were times, I was rereading it again today just for this, and there were times I was like, oh gosh, that was an event.
I know, and we're so glad you survived. Just for the listeners out there, Temmy and I work together and have been friends for a long, long time. I didn't know you were there, though, at the time. I had no idea that you were in Thailand.
No, I don't think many people did.
No.
It was when our principal started phoning around to see where various people had gone on holiday that I think anyone knew that where anyone else was.
I didn't know many people who had been there, and you certainly had the most traumatic experience of the people that I did know. Temmy, thank you so much for meeting with me today and talking about your near-death experience and escaping the tsunami. And I'm super proud of you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story. It's amazing, really inspirational and really powerful.
Well, if it didn't sound so odd, I'd say it was a pleasure.
It was my pleasure. Folks, if you feel that this is a podcast that would be interesting to your friends, please can you share it? And please can you rate and review me on iTunes to take me up the iTunes charts? It'll be great to get Temmy's story out there because it is one of a miraculous story of survival. Thanks again, Temmy. It's been amazing.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Confidants. I want to tell you about my Patreon page. I've joined Patreon in the hope of getting sponsorship for my Hong Kong Confidential podcast. Patreon is a great way for my listeners to get on board and sponsor me with monthly payments, and that goes towards my production costs and rewards for my members. If you're interested in checking out my Patreon page, please go to patreon.com and search up Jules Hannaford or Hong Kong Confidential. I would really appreciate you visiting my page. So that brings us to the end of another Hong Kong Confidential podcast. I'm Jules Hannaford. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you'll be with me again next week. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please can you go to iTunes to rate and review it. I would really appreciate your feedback. You can email me at jules@hongkongconfidential.net, and you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Hong Kong Confidential. If you'd like to hit me up on Twitter, it's at Jules Hannaford. I would love to hear from you.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.